Hello Year 5 and welcome to your English lesson for today. So today we're going to be looking at using figurative language to infer imagery. Okay, so we're trying to create an image in someone's mind and we're going to focus specifically on personification today. So we're going to look at the different uses of personification and we're going to understand how to personify an object. So how we're going to give an inanimate object human characteristics is something that it can do. And then we're going to think of those different human characteristics for different objects. And then we're going to focus it primarily on some of the objects from our video that we've looked at so far. And you're then going to have a go at writing sentences using different types of personification. So let's have a look at this one, for example. So this is a clock. Okay, and clocks, we know that they're not humans. We know they can't physically do anything like a human can. But here I've written the sentence, my alarm clock yelled at me to wake up. I wonder if you can tell me, which word have I used there to try and personify that clock? Good, so I've used the word yelled, okay? When we talk or we shout, we yell, don't we? Now, clocks don't have mouths, so they don't have that ability to yell or to shout. Now, I didn't say that my alarm clock whispered either. Why would I not say that my alarm clock whispered? Okay, well, my alarm clock is there purposely to be loud and to wake me up in the morning. So if it's going to whisper it to me, I'm not going to get out of bed if my alarm clock's going to whisper to me. So it's all about thinking about an appropriate word to fit it as well. So we've got my alarm clock yelled at me to wake up. What about this one here? The lightning danced across the sky. What word have I used there to personify the lightning? Okay, so I've used the word danced, haven't I? Okay, we know that when we dance, we move. Okay, it could be different types of movement, but one way or another, it's still dancing. So I've got the lightning danced across the sky. It moves from one space to the other. Now, I can't say there, I could say there that the lightning bellowed across the sky, okay, because we know that lightning makes a big noise when it cracks or even with the thunder. So I could use bellow, but I couldn't say that the lightning walked across the sky or that the lightning sprinted across the sky, because the lightning in itself does move fast, but it doesn't move in one general direction like you would do if you were running or whether you were walking. So it's important to think of the appropriate words to match as well. And what about this one? The moon played hide and seek with the clouds. What word or words or phrase have I used there to personify the moon? Okay, so I used played hide and seek. So we've got the word played. Okay, so played is a verb, that's something that you do. Now, the moon can't play hide and seek. It can't physically play or move as such, can it, like a human can? And we've got there that it played hide and seek with the clouds, because the clouds are moving across where the moon is. So obviously sometimes you see the moon and then it disappears behind the clouds. So there it's playing a game, so we've signified that it's almost like a child that it's playing hide and seek with the clouds. So when we use personification, the personification is when an object or the noun is given a human characteristic. So here you can see highlighted in blue all the different words that I have used to personify my objects. So the first one, the camera loves her since she is so pretty. So I've said that the camera loves. Now, a camera doesn't have the ability to feel or to have emotions, and I'm describing it as the camera that loves her. Okay, so I've given the camera there a human emotion. The stairs groaned when we walked on them. We know that stairs make a noise, don't we, when we stand on them? Like sometimes they creak. Now, if we think that they're pulling on all that extra weight when someone's standing on them, you might groan. So there I'm personifying my object, which is my stairs. A vacuum cleaner hums a happy tune when it cleans. Well, vacuums don't have voice boxes, so they can't actually hum or speak or talk. They don't have vocal cords. But they do make a noise when you hoover them around, don't they? So you could say that the vacuum hums a happy tune. Wouldn't necessarily say it hums a happy tune. It's almost just one very, monotone tune. But one way or another, we could say it hums. Now, my flowers were begging me for water. And when we beg for something, that's when we're asking for something, but we're desperate for something. Now, we know that flowers do need water because that's how they survive. That's how they keep alive and grow. So you've got my flowers were begging for water. Okay. The ivy wove its fingers around the fence. Now, ivy doesn't have fingers. It'd be a little bit creepy if we had things growing up the sides of walls and trees that had hands and fingers. But different parts of the ivy intertwine around a fence, don't they? They start to grow into other things where they find a gap. And that's a little bit like if I picked something up that had holes in it, I could get my fingers into it, couldn't I? So I could wrap my fingers around something that might have holes in it. So therefore, I'm describing the ivy, which is my object, as having fingers, so that it's able to wind itself around. Now, I wouldn't say that the ivy wove its toes around the fence or wove its hair around the fence, because that wouldn't make sense, because you have to compare it to something that a human would be able to do as well. Now, I'd be able to wind myself around a fence with my fingers because I'd wrap my hands around it, wouldn't it, to hold on to it. The thunder was grumbling in the distance. Okay, again, we know that thunder doesn't have a voice box, it can't speak, but we know that we can associate that noise almost like with the grumbling of your belly. Okay, and that's something we do, we grumble, or you moan when you grumble. Oh, I'm having a bit of a grumble today because I'm in a bad mood. Okay, so there we're using grumble as our personification, and we are personifying the thunder. And then the last one, the cactus saluted those who drove past. Now, when you salute, it's when you stand to attention. Okay, it's very army-based thing to do. It's a sign of respect. Now, cactuses don't have arms. Obviously, they have their different branches that come up at different kinds of angles. So it could be that because they're usually stationary in this position, they're in a salute position, aren't they? They're stationary. It could also be the cactus spikes on them as well, because they also stand up on end, don't they? When you salute, you stand up nice and straight and tall. So there we're personifying the cactus. So we're going to have a go at doing some of this for our pictures for our story. Now, it's not going to be a particularly long lesson because we've done a lot of personification before. And because you already know how to do it in the teaching element, I'm just going to model some ideas. You're going to have a go at modelling some as well. And then I'm going to set you off for you to create as many sentences as you can about some different aspects of our video. So here I have my first opening picture, and I'm thinking, well, what can I see that I can personify? Well, I know I've got the moon because we talked about the moonbeam, didn't we? So I've thought to myself, well, what kind of words can I think that a human does that a moon could possibly do? Well, no, a moon can't sneeze, okay, because that's going to be pointless. I know that a moon could sleep, okay, could have sleeping on there. I know sometimes when I'm driving in the car, if I drive a really long distance, sometimes it doesn't look like the moon has moved. It looks like the moon's like following me in the same direction because like it followed me, stalked me. I could be sat there late at night, it's just watching me. And rather than just it watching me, it's paying really close attention to me, so it's staring at me. And it could even be that maybe that the moon waved at me or smiled at me, because we have that concept, don't we, from fairy tales of having the man in the moon, okay? So I've just put down some ideas then. I've tried to think, well, which ones would be appropriate to describe a human and a moon? So these are what I've come up with. We've got winked, smiled, waved, watched, followed, stalked, and stared. Now, I'm going to write some simple sentences, and in my next example, I'm going to up-level them, so I'm going to improve them. So, the first sentence here, the moon was resting in the midnight sky. Okay, so my personification word there is resting. Okay, when we rest, we sit, we sleep, we have a nap. Moons don't do that. Okay, they don't need to rest. They're not exactly exerting any energy. They're just chilling in the sky. They don't move. So, the moon was resting in the midnight sky. Okay, so I'm describing my moon. I came up with another sentence that I thought was a bit better. So the moon smiled down on the sleeping town below. So what word do you think I've used in that sentence that personifies the moon? Ah, okay, well done. So it smiled, okay? The moon doesn't have a face, okay? I know we have that idea of the man in the moon, but obviously that's based on science fiction. But I think that's the element of where the smiled came down from. If you're in a happy mood and it's a happy evening, it's nice and calm, it's nice and breezy, it's very gentle, then it would smile. If it's going to be a bad day, maybe there's a thunderstorm coming, you might say, oh, the moon frowned, because you're almost trying to pick into the emotions. And at the moment in our opening, everything is calm, very peaceful, very quiet. Now I came up with an even better sentence. I gazed up at the stars-filled sky, and they winked back to me. What word have I used there to personify something? See if you can tell me. Okay, so I winked. Now it says they winked back at me. Okay, so I've got the winked. Now the they is actually the pronoun linked to the stars. So I'm linking it to the stars rather than the sky that's winked back. So I'm talking about they, I'm linking it to the stars. Now, obviously, when we wink, sort of we close our eye and we open our eye. And when we look at stars, they almost twinkle, don't they? And they go on and off, on and off, on and off. So it's almost like that open and close of an eye, that on, off, open, close. So there I've said that the stars looked down at me and they winked. Okay, so I've got the stars in there as well. So let's see if you guys can help with this one as well. So we've got the weather and the wind. So what I want you to do is just pause the video. Can you think of any words that we could use that we might describe the wind that would be things that us as humans do? So just pause the video for 60 seconds. See if you can jot down any words that we would use to personify the wind. Okay, well, I came up with some of them. So let's see if you came up with some additional ones. So I have the wind howled, whipped, whispered, kissed, cried out, danced, and raced. Now, there's probably a much longer list than that, so well done if you've got some additional ones in there that I actually might have missed out on. So you can use one of the words that you've got to help write your sentence. So my first sentence I'm going to write is, the bitter wind howled, echoing through the vast mountains like a lion's roar. Okay, now here you can see I used the bitter wind howled. Okay, but I also added a simile in here that it echoed through vast mountains like a lion's roar. So that just goes to show how loud that howl was from the wind. Okay, what I want you to do now is I want you to see if you can write a sentence. So you've seen one of my examples. I want you to now pick one of those words. Think about your adjectives, your expanded noun phrases, and your sentence clauses. Can you now have a go at writing a sentence of your own using one of your words or my words for the wind? Okay, well, I had another go because I think that actually I kind of improved my sentence. So, as I meandered the thinning pathway, the cool breeze rushed through the trees, gently kissing my rosy cheeks. Okay, now had I proofread this properly, I can see I'd made a spelling mistake, so I'd go back and I'd change as I. Now, rather than putting I walked down the road, I walked down the path and the breeze came past me and made me cold, I put as I meandered. So when you meander, that means that you walk at a different, in like a different direction. So rather than going in one straight line, you almost go off on your own little path. You meander. So it's almost like a snake fashion. So as I meandered the thinning path, also because we know we're in the mountainsides, there's not going to be very many people walking around. So those pathways have got thinner now because no one's walking them anymore. The cool breeze, so got an adjective, rushed through the trees gently, got an adverb, kissing my rosy cheeks. Now, when you kiss someone on the cheek, like you kiss your mum and dad or your grandparents, it's like a little peck on the cheek, isn't it? Okay, if it's anything like my grandma, I always end up with a little red lipstick stain every single time she used to give me a kiss on the cheek. But it's very gentle, okay? And if it's a cool breeze, it's just going to slightly rush through. It's just going to brush past your cheeks. It's almost as gentle as being kissed on the cheek, okay? But I also added rosy cheeks in there because I needed to include my adjectives. So now that I've written my sentence, can you now go back and look at the one you just wrote and think, well, actually, is there any way I can improve on that sentence? So if you can, pause the video and update it. Okay, so your task now, because I feel like that's quite an easy one for you to be able to do, I want to now actually assess what skills you think you've learnt over the last few weeks without looking at an example of mine. Okay, so you have the opening paragraph that I gave you yesterday that I wrote. So that's at the end of the last video. So you can use that to help you if you need to. But all I want you to do today is create as many sentences as you can for the different features of the story so far. So what you're going to concentrate today is the moon, the wind, the lantern, the door, the key, and the dark. If you want to do some additional ones in there, maybe for the stars or maybe for the trees or for something else that you think that you can personify, by all means, go for it. Not a problem. Okay, so think about adding some additional words to the word bank. So I've come up with these ones on here, which I've sent home to you as well. If you think you can think of other ones, add them on and write them down in your sentences. And you need to try and make your sentences as interesting as you can. And by interesting, I mean you need to think about your clausal structure. Okay, you've got your fronted adverbials, you've got your relative clauses with your relative pronouns, you've got your embedded clauses. Okay, think about your different sentence structures, especially those of you who need to be challenging yourselves in your writing for greater depth. You need to be varying up your sentence structure. Okay, think about using your adjectives. We did expanded noun phrases in the essay, so there should be absolutely no reason for a single noun not to have an adjective in front of it. Okay, if it's two adjectives, remember your comma. Okay. Use the work yesterday to help you because you would have come up with some really good vocabulary for the moon yesterday and for the stars. So if you have done that, like we had iridescent, shimmering, bright, sparkling, go back and look at the work you've done because you can magpie some of those adjectives. I would like you to write a minimum of 3 sentences for each one. Okay, so 3 sentences for the moon, the wind, the lantern, the dark, the key, and the door. Okay, so in total, you should have 18 sentences as a minimum. Okay, if you struggle with one of them, try and do some extra ones for some of the other ones. Okay, but I want to see how many amazing sentences you guys can come up with. Okay, and then we will think about using those when we come around to doing our flashback writing next week. Okay, so make sure you keep them to hand. Okay, see how you get on. Use the word banks that you were sent home with yesterday and think about your emotive language. Think about all your skills and showcase them to me in your very simple sentences. All right, good luck, year 5.